Russia's offensive continues to look incredibly anemic, so much so that even Western leaders are left scratching their heads. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's February 16th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. As we approach, of course, the 1 year mark of the war, we know that Russia really values symbolic dates and anniversaries. This is a throwback from the Soviet era. And I really seems like they want to have some sort of victory to tout before the Russian public, some sort of indicator of progress. But when we look at the map updates for today, they're going to have to be stretching the truth even harder than usual to find something. You can see here they have, and I think this is kind of significant, they've pushed on to the southwestern side of this roadway here. This is significant because, again, I think this forms at least kind of a natural barrier for Ukrainian forces to establish a defensive line. So the fact that Russia has sort of breached it is actually not a great sign, especially for Ukrainian forces defending in Pereskovivka, simply because, again, this probably isn't used as a supply route. It's far too close to the front lines, but it does form a natural barrier right in. Even on the tactical level, we will call these roads sometimes linear danger areas, simply because they are easily mined. You have to expose yourself to cross them. They are free of obstacles, sort of definitionally by a road. So they are tactically tough spots to be in. And so when you are able to cross them effectively, it can really make it easier, especially when you get this vanguard across and then you can bring more forces across this roadway without having to worry about it. I'm not sure where in the tactical map you would find Ukrainian forces able to sink in a new front line. Again, this is looking sort of precarious, this roadway here. And as we talked about yesterday, some Western leaders are rumored to have started to indicate to Ukraine that Bakhmut's defense has been successful, right? They have effectively eliminated the Wagner Group as a militarily viable organization. No small feat, given that they're 50,000 convicts strong. And they've turned Bachmann into an absolute Russian meat grinder. But conducting a controlled withdrawal while maximizing Russian casualties is honestly not the worst call in the world. Yes, it would give Putin their much sought victory, but ultimately a victory at this level of cost for something as insignificant operationally as Bachmann is worth it. You can see here Russia's continued to be unable to advance around this road here in running from Chasiv Yar to Ivanivsky to Bachmann. This is just, again, the little progress they have to show is just incremental. It truly is. You can see just, let's see. Yeah, it looks like even they're just ever so slightly. I think this is actually an adjustment to the mapping itself. They're actually listed as being on the far side of the canal here. But when we zoom out, right, keep in mind just the scale of these things. You know, I'm here to, I was a platoon leader. I know I embrace tactics and small terrain movements like this, but we need to bear in mind that when we analyze Bachmann, deeply, that it's mostly symbolic, right? You can see that Bachmann isn't any more significant than Lyman or Izium or Borova or Kupiansk, right? All of which were flipped in control in the Kharkiv offensive weeks ago. Certainly, it pales in comparison to Kherson, a large regional capital. So we just need to bear in mind that Bachmann is not worth a valiant last stand. It simply isn't. Ukraine's best position remains a major counteroffensive. If it were up to me, I would say probably in the northern Luhansk region or possibly Zaporizhzhia, maybe trying to exploit Russian administrative weaknesses along this Donetsk Zaporizhia border. I think actually either one of those I would find to be probably worthwhile, though you'd want to find a way to carve out a natural barrier for your forces. Some sort of put Russia. If you're going to have Russians on either side of you, have that line be drawn by a river or a mountain range or something that's going to make it really hard for them to roll back your gains, because it's hard, right? Punching a corridor into enemy lines is hard, and it's really hard to sustain. But it can be really decisive if you break apart enemy controlled territory, especially like this, where look, if you have even a narrow gap between these two, let's say, look at how hard it would be to move if you wanted to move Russian troops from Melitopol to Donetsk. You have to take them out, down, around Crimea, literally around the entire, the Caspian, all the way up and back in, right? A huge logistic burden. But anyway, this is just me speculating. What's not speculative is that the Russian forces remain really unable to make meaningful gains along this Crimean-Lyman axis. It's just not there for them, and they just don't seem to be able to do anything. When we look at the combat map, you can see, of course, Russia dropping a lot of firepower into attempting to take Volodar, but this has been just... Rumors indicate that this has been an absolute disaster. This is like something that might get actually told in the annals of Russian history as one of the biggest military disasters they're facing is the effort to take Volodar. Again, rumors are that I think it's a naval infantry brigade has been eliminated. Naval infantry eliminated. Let's see if we can find some of this. This is all right from the Moscow Times. Elite Russian Marine unit. I don't think they're that elite. Nearly destroyed near Volodar. The 5,000 strong 155th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade nearly destroyed. Up to 300 Marines per day were KIA in Russia's assault on this coal mining town. Losses were so severe that only 8 men remained in one landing assault company. Other survivors taken prisoner. Those who survived were said to be deserters, the unnamed Marine was quoted as saying. Of course, 90% of these were recently mobilized soldiers. So calling them elite is pretty generous. You can see here Volodar has been just absolutely decimated, but ultimately it's still not enough for the Ukrainian forces to abandon the town. And Russian naval infantry just paying a steep price, losing a 5,000 soldier brigade to take something that you and I could walk across in probably about 10 minutes. Is just a testament to the Russian way of war. But you can see that it hasn't stopped them from attacking, from spreading their combat power, abandoning the very concept of economy of force. Donetsk City, Bachmann, just no changes to their strategy, right? An attack along the Lyman front, Bilohorivka, right? Somehow attacking while they're not mutually supporting, right? You can't support a unit. You could, in theory, support a unit when there's a big terrain obstacle preventing you from doing so, but it would require two very highly trained units with very, very effective precision weapons, neither of which Russian forces have in their arsenal right now. And you could see that you could just see the story. The story isn't changing, and that's the strangest part of all this. Of course, War Mapper's out here assessing no notable changes. This is so strange that it's confusing even UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, who told the BBC that the UK hasn't seen the Russians massing a single force to push through in a big offensive, said the Russians are trying now instead to advance in Donbas at a huge cost. Russia could have committed up to, they think, about 97% of its army to the fight in Ukraine, and that its combat effectiveness is decreased by 40% due to an almost First World War level of attrition. This is an actually accurate characterization, I think. All right, that measures Russian advances in meters. The Institute for the Study of War can't confirm Wallace's estimates, but oftentimes these sort of broad statements are informed by a classified intelligence apparatus, sometimes called the Five Eyes. Let me make sure I can talk about this. Yeah, okay. The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance, basically. These are all English-speaking countries that have similarly high standards for the vetting and security of their national intelligence apparatus. And so because they have such relatively leak-free agencies, they're able to share a lot of their intelligence through a multilateral agreement. So when you have this sort of, so when one of these Five Eyes ministers of defense gives a statement, you can assume that even if it doesn't contain specifics, it's backed by, in all likelihood, some of the best intelligence agencies and analysts in the entire world. The UK among them, man. Don't kid yourself. MI6 is not to be trifled with. So anyway, yeah. So when you hear this from someone like the UK Defense Minister, you can be pretty confident that this is probably well vetted. He also observes that Russia probably lacks the mechanized combat power for a breakthrough because it looks like Russia's burned a lot of its, about 50% of its more modern mechanized armored forces, forcing them to rely on sort of older, outdated equipment. And Russia's industrial output just can't keep up. They're subject to too many sanctions, and their losses are outstripping their productive capability. They're still not the sort of industrial power they might need to be. Though Russia is still capable of producing large quantities of small arms, missiles, and tanks, it's just their burn rate is just so much greater than their ability to generate. To be generative. So, I think this is, I'm still not willing to call the Russian offensive dead because, Russia's ability to plod through even in the face of massive, tremendous casualties is pretty, shocking, honestly, especially for something where, you have something like Ukraine, where it's not like an existential threat. It's kind of difficult for the Russian propaganda machine to even spin this as being worth the price Russian civil society is paying. Anyway, guys, thanks so much, as always. Of course, if you want access to the viral combat video breakdowns, the new video is dropping tomorrow. Every Friday, I look at the week's most intense combat videos. I break them all down on the Patreon, where YouTube can't tell me what I can and can't post. I hope you guys, thanks to all my supporters, but especially my Colonel tier patron, Thomas McLeod, and my Lieutenant tier patrons. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys in the next one.